Well, Brandon, thank you for making time for the podcast, man. I've listened to the interview you did with John at 343 and enjoyed that a lot. And then I was talking to Aaron recently, and he mentioned to me, he said, I think we should have Brandon on the show. And obviously following along with what you're doing on social media, know a little bit about you, but for the folks listening to this that have never heard your name before, tell them who you are and where you reside and a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love talking. Aaron knows that a little bit. But I'm Brandon Ponchak. I'm the general manager and I'm an assistant coach with the Cincinnati Dutch Lions, USL2 team. We're located in greater Cincinnati. Had a few seasons that we played in Cincinnati the last 3 years and soon to be fourth year. We play at Northern Kentucky University in Highland Heights, Kentucky. My wife and I, we have 3 kids. We reside in Northern Kentucky, and I do a lot of coaching around. I work with Ohio Elite Soccer Academy. I'm the director of goalkeeping there. I also own my own goalkeeper glove franchise, S1 Goalkeeping.
So, like I say, you've done a little bit of everything. I'm interested. So we're probably going to jump around a little bit in this podcast because I was reading, some of the stuff you'd written. This is a couple years old at this point, but about solidarity payments and promotion relegation and sort of the state of U.S. soccer. But tell folks a little bit about the Cincinnati Dutch Lions and some exciting news that came out recently, right? You guys play in the USL2, but you're also now playing in the OVPL and what that actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cincinnati Dutch Lions was established in 2013. At the time, the Dayton Dutch Lions were USL Pro, and we started as their amateur affiliate, a way to scout some players during the summer, college players or wherever they might come from, and hopefully feed them into the Dayton Dutch Lions and the pro realm after the season or even the next year. One thing led to another. Dayton is no longer pro, and we still operate amateur. So that 2020 will be our 6th season in operation. It's over the last 4 years. Well, this will be season 4. I've been here. I got hired in March of 2017 under new ownership, and we've kind of just flipped it upside down in how we operate. Extremely professional. Some say we have a better setup here than many pro teams do. I know our ownership's extremely invested in our club, but also the development of players and the opportunities that they want to give to players. They want to move them on however we can move them on, but we also want to win. Over the last 2 seasons, in 2018 and 2019, we realized that we could do more in the Cincinnati area, and that was to provide more opportunities for players. So we started a training group that we hope to add some competitions wherever we could, but the downside is we just never could find enough competition. So that led to us exploring with other groups. The Indy Saints was the primary driver behind that as well, because they were in a league that folded in 2017. After that season, they had no men's team, no league for the men's team to play in. So they started a WPSL team, which they've been competing WPSL since. And that led to the formation of the Ohio Valley Premier League, the OVPL. And we have 3 teams that we've announced, Cincinnati Dutch Lions, Indy Saints, and Lexington Land Sharks. And there are more on tap. There's just a few loose ends to kind of iron out there for that.
You said something there that was interesting to me in terms of, perhaps being maybe a little bit more professional than, maybe some of the MLS clubs or, pro teams that we have here in the States. And I guess I'm wondering what that actually means. You mentioned the ownership group that, heavily invested in really they're all in, so to speak, in terms of what you're trying to do. What's that look like? Describe that for the audience.
Yeah. I honestly, I won't be, and I can't speak to how some USL teams or MLS teams operate. I just know from what our guys have said. I know some USL teams don't give a per diem sometimes. And we go out and the guys get fed all the time. Wherever we go, they're going to have food. When they're here with us, Monday through Friday, they get lunch provided to them. They get a stipend, weekly stipend that covers food. Everything's 100% NCAA legal. There's no issues with it. And I know I'm on top of the NCAA rules and regulations probably more than some compliance officers are, because I just want to make sure that our guys are going to be compliant with everything. And, they have apartments that they stay in that are basically brand new. They're fully furnished. They get Wi-Fi. They travel in a bus. We've had some players play overseas, and they go out and they're fed on an away game. They're fed. They stop at a convenience store basically, and they have to go and get their own sandwiches. For us, no, we want to make sure that everybody's healthy and fed right. So we'll iron out and map out wherever we need to go to make sure they get the proper nutrition, and really sometimes what the players want, maybe not necessarily what we want for them or what we think. Pregame meals for players and how they want to prep is a lot different. Some people want chicken and rice, and other people want some pasta with some sauces or whatever it might be. Some people want Panera. We'll sort it out and we'll make sure everybody's taken care of. We got a gym that we work with, LA Fitness, and Florence is amazing. They've been our home gym for 3 seasons now, and this will be season 4 coming up. They have everything there that they could ask for, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from where the guys stay. So, and Northern Kentucky University, they treat us excellent. We got a locker room that's basically ours through the summer. Opponents have a nice locker room as well. We have athletic training provided to us with St. Elizabeth, which is the largest employer in Northern Kentucky, and they've been amazing. Ice baths, kind of whatever we want. And then we also have cryotherapy and some other wellness stuff provided to them. Nano V, Normatec, provided to them by Cryo Place in Anderson Township, Ohio.
Well, Aaron, go ahead.
So how do you guys go about recruiting the players? Do you have a kind of a director of player personnel, or obviously general manager? I think that's one of the titles you hold, right?
Yeah, that's one of the few.
Yeah. So how does that work? How do you find the players? Because obviously, if I'm a college player and I hear what amenities and benefits you guys have, I want to play for you all.
And that's what we want. I mean, we know that we have a great setup, and our head coach, Paul Nicholson, played for Wilmington Hammerheads in USL. He played for FC Cincinnati. He was one of the first 11 players that FC Cincinnati signed. He played there for 3 years. His connections are amazing. His network is amazing. I let Paul take care of a lot of it because he's the head coach. I want to make sure that he has the guys that he trusts and he wants in, and his network. And we watch them play. I mean, that's one of the number one things we try to do. We want either video or we want to watch them play in person. And I put a lot of miles on in the last 3 seasons recruiting and scouting opposition wherever I can. And then watching, I'm so thankful for ESPN Plus these days, because almost every game's on there and we can go back and watch things again as well. So Paul and I mean, we're the two on staff that really do tons of recruiting. We have some networks in the Netherlands, of course, being the Dutch Lions, that do help us with some Dutch players. That's where, our maybe one of my favorites, because he was a goalkeeper, but Zeus de la Paz, he came through our Dutch system and our Dutch network, and now he's playing Oldham Athletic in England League One. So
when did he play? Because I saw all of your tweets about Zeus, and I was wondering how that connection was. So he played for the Cincinnati Dutch Lions?
Yeah, he played for us in 2017, which was my first year here. Sid Van Drunen, who's now the assistant at Wright State, recruited and scouted Zeus in the Netherlands and brought him over that year, and he was excellent. I mean, it was just his voice, just a booming presence. I don't know how he was without a contract, and I told him that after the end of the season. I said he's the best goalkeeper I've ever coached, straight up.
So he obviously has to have a booming voice with his name,
right? With Zeus, and that. I mean, he was on that year. So we had him in 17. He signed. He was basically with Oldham all fall after we had him. Unfortunately, that year, England passed a law, or signing players kind of guidelines, that if you were an amateur player, you couldn't be signed immediately. If you were a free agent, you had to wait until the transfer window. So unfortunately, they wanted him that fall, but he had to wait until the January transfer window to sign with them.
Wow.
And then that spring, he was in some best name in European soccer contest, and I think he made it to the second round. He actually lost to one of his teammates at Oldham.
Who was what? Poseidon? Or
Jesus.
I'm not even gonna.
Jesus might be the only one that could beat him, right? I don't know. But what kind of goalkeeper gloves does he wear?
S1 goalkeeping.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. He actually turned me on to the gloves. He wore some different. I mean, I think he had a pair of swoosh gloves.
Yeah.
That, when he was here with us, and then when he signed with Oldham, he ended up signing with S1. I've been looking for a quality glove and an affordable glove, and he wears them. He said nothing but positive things about him. So he turned me on to him, and we got in contact, and there it was. It was a match made in heaven, I guess. And S1's been here for us ever since. And then I actually April this year is when I started with S1.
There you go. So now we can have a product testing podcast where we test out the S1.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well,
they're great gloves. I mean, and for $40, that's the retail value. I mean,
wow,
you can't beat them. I mean, you can't beat them.
This isn't the first time that three goalkeepers have been on this podcast at the same time, and it's like, how many goalkeepers does it take to change a light bulb? So. We're just good at stopping shots. I don't know if we're good at anything else. And even that I wasn't very good at. So
at least our hands will be protected.
There you go.
That's right. So there's something in the name Cincinnati Dutch Lions that obviously stands out to me, Brandon, that, is a little different maybe than some other clubs out there. And it's the word Dutch. And, I've been sharing a lot of what Ajax does. And, I've always appreciated what goes on in the Netherlands, but I think it's just been that I found it more easily, or it's been more in my face this year or whatever. But, every weekend that there is an international break, I mean, I'm watching something from, the Dutch First League, First Division football. And I think it's actually really great football to watch. So I'm wondering if that translates into style of play, or kind of how you go about training players at your club.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of our main focuses, and it's our identity and what we want to play. We build out of the back. We want to be creative. We want to attack. We want to defend really hard. That's one of the things, even with Sid, when Sid came in here in year one, and Sid's Dutch, and then he left for the Wright State job, because it was a little closer to home. He still lived in Dayton. And then Paul retired, and it was kind of just it was a perfect storm, really, to bring in Paul right after that, basically. And that's Paul's identity as well. I mean, even though he's English, he wants to defend hard, and he wants to attack very creative. He wants to keep a ball. That's how we do it. And from 2017, 2018, 2019, we have the top three goals against averages in club's history. I mean, it's only 5-6 years now. That's what we want to do. I mean, that's how we know if we don't give up goals, then it gives us a chance to win. And then we create goals. It's just up to us to be able to finish them then.
So some people listening to this, obviously there's a lot of folks that believe in, possession-based soccer and, keeping the ball obviously more than the opponent. And I mentioned in the last podcast that even watching Aaron's Ohio women's team, that they play really attractive football. And I've never seen the Cincinnati Dutch Lions play, but I mean they're on my list to watch in the upcoming season for sure. But I'm wondering if that is almost 180 degrees different than what goes on here in the U.S. in many cases. And I say this, from some of the high school kids I've worked with all the way down to, the U10 players that I'm going to train tomorrow night, that there's this, mentality that comes from, I'm not sure where it comes from, probably comes from a few different places, but this idea that, a football is really like a hot potato or a ticking time bomb, that a kid has to get rid of it. And I certainly don't believe that. I don't think you guys believe that. I think a lot of the listening audience probably doesn't believe that. And I'm just wondering that, there has to be a certain type of player or person that kind of buys into what you're doing, because if they're brought up in this sort of very traditional American, bigger, faster, stronger environment, that, what you're trying to do is probably 180 degrees opposite of that.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. Even recruiting college games, I think I've been to probably close to, just personally been to 80 college games over the last 2 seasons, or high school and college, I guess I should say. It's very rare to really see people and teams want to focus on possession, and to calm a ball down and to not go forward. I mean, I can't count the amount of times that a ball's been played back to a goalkeeper even. That's so rare. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I went to Ohio high school state championship games, and out of 3 boys games, I saw the intentionally get passed back to a goalkeeper 1 time in 3 games.
Why do you think that is?
Number one, I think probably goalkeepers aren't skilled enough with a ball. That will shy coaches away from it. But I also think it's just not something they truly believe in. They want to just attack, or they just want to get the ball forward and maybe try to win the ball back farther up the field. They feel like, hey, let's limit our errors in the back and maybe with our goalkeeper, and that means don't play back to him or her. I mean, because it's the same.
Yeah, I definitely think, when you look at the importance of results, especially in the college game and I guess at that level of the high school game, you're trying to eliminate that margin for error. And if when you play that style, when you play where you try to go backwards instead of forwards, and especially when you're going to your last line, that margin for error is very, very thin. And and I think people just aren't interested in dealing with that, and it's difficult. I think one of the questions that I had, and I think it's also very appropriate to the college game, which obviously you've had experience in that as well, is the amount of time that you have to develop and create your style in the college game, and even in your game at the USL2 level, is so short. You don't have much time. And so the easiest way to push for those results is put it in the other team's half immediately, press them and allow them to make the mistake, and then, go to goal. And so, I mean, you find the similarities there from the college game to the USL2 level because of the timing of the amount of time that you can develop that?
Yeah. One of the things I've always thought interesting is to see the differences in how international players are with American players when it comes to even just technical passing exercises. It could be a box, the Dutch square or a Y passing or whatever it is. Our international goalkeepers, they want involved in those. If you ask American goalkeeper to get in there, even coaches, they'll be like, no, we don't want them in there. Go over and, do some volleys, kick, get ready. We'll use you in 30 minutes. No, I mean, we incorporate our goalkeepers in every technical passing thing that we can. unless it's one, hey, let's get them warmed up because after this, we're going to go straight to goal or whatever it's going to be. We need them ready. That to me, that's extreme. And it's not going to be it's not asking much to say, hey, 10, 15 minutes of a passing exercise and goalkeepers are going to get better.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously this is kind of going off on a different tangent, but because we're all goalkeeper people here. I mean, I think that's one of the things training my goalkeepers is every training session, if it's involving the full team or if it's just the goalkeepers together alone, is there's some type of technical aspect with your feet, distribution, short, medium, long range passing, because it's so vital, and those are things that those players, those goalkeepers have to really embrace that in order to play the way that we want to play, because we need that goalkeeper to set play. We need that goalkeeper to be able to change the point of attack. We need that goalkeeper to be able to have a varying range of passing, just like you would expect your center back to have, because basically they're the deepest center back. And I think that's so important to do. But you're exactly right. I mean, they need to be involved in the technical aspects, if not with the outfield team, but in their goalkeeper session itself. I mean, there's so many easy ways to incorporate, even with handling activities, with some technical work with the ball, with their feet. And I think that's just something that I've evolved into over the last 10 years as a goalkeeper coach as well.
Yeah. One of the first things we do pregame for our goalkeepers is we play out of the back with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't even warm up their hands first. They warm up their feet. They want to play balls wide and at varying distances on the floor. Boom. Can we knock some in the air? It's important. I mean, it sets a tone right there that they're going to strike balls. They're going to continue to hit balls. They're going to get that confidence with their feet. And then we're going to go to their hands. We
don't exactly ask them to be like Alisson from Liverpool and Cruyff people in the box, or dink it over the on-rushing forward, but that's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said about the distances and short, medium, and longer. I mean, even just over the last 2 weeks, being at some tryouts, being at some training sessions with different groups, talking to a couple of goalkeeper coaches, it was amazing to hear that there's such an emphasis of building out of the back that a lot of times goalkeepers aren't even looking at the next level. They're not, like, they say, hey, we need to, especially in club now, you can play inside the box. So they immediately set the ball down. They play to a center back that's in the box instead of saying, hey, why can't I find my six who might be breaking lines? Or an outside midfielder who might be breaking lines. They don't even look for that, even if they might be open, because they're so wired to say, hey, we got to play out of the back now.
Well, I mean, I think, listen, because people say that and people think, okay, I got to play short because that's what playing out of the back is. Well, guess what? A smart team is going to press you high up the field. And so they're going to sit their three, if they're playing a 4-3-3, whatever they're playing, they're going to sit their three forwards up on your players. And so you're going to be immediately pressed. So why not be able to play a 30-yard ball to the wide area to your fullback who's high up the field? Because then we can start playing from that moment, because we're breaking that initial press, and dependent upon how the opposing team is setting up to defend in those moments, I mean, that's a huge ball to be able to play. And I think that's important in obviously not only developing your goalkeeper, but also setting up your team to break those lines of pressure that are coming if you want to play out of the back. Because as soon as you do that and you start hitting that 2-3 times, guess what? They're going to drop off, and now you play short again, bring them out, play in, whatever, building through the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's come to a point where the opponents are pressed so high that they know it's going to be pass short, so they allow the pass to short, and then they might drop the ball back to the goalkeeper or another center back, and that ball just gets knocked long anyway. Mm-hmm. Without even looking at those next level passes or breaking lines. So it just ends up being a long 50-50 ball anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, what you just described is, I put this tweet out. It was late Sunday night this past week. I was watching some of the women's NCAA tournament. I'm not going to name the teams, but that's exactly what happened numerous times. And, I put out something to the effect of like, that's not what playing out of the back looks like. Just because you pass it to, one of your outside backs or your center back and they play it back to the keeper who smashes it forward, 50 or 60 yards, not exactly what we had in mind there. And Aaron, everything you said, is completely spot on. I think it just speaks to the unpredictability that a team can be and just how multidimensional a team can be, right? Because, if they're playing short, team presses high, then okay, then we got to change, we got to adapt. But having just even a little bit of a soccer IQ to recognize it, I saw this with the team that I was coaching in the fall, their inability to recognize when something changed. They were good at that initial, assessment of the situation, and they knew what to do in that initial assessment. Okay, any opponent is going to change. They're going to adapt. They're going to, sort of take on the shape of water depending on what's going on. So you have to be able to, counterpunch to their punch. And that, we struggled with that at different times with my high school group because they couldn't, that second or third read just wasn't there for them at times. And that comes with experience, that comes with the repetition of just doing it over and over again. And, to what you said before about just the limited amount of time in high school or college you have with a team, it's how many things can you cover in one day and they're actually going to retain, any of it for that matter. So go in a slightly different direction here, Brandon. So obviously, coaching, but also being a guy who brings in a coach or has a say in, selecting a coach. Hang on one sec here.
Yeah.
Okay. So what makes a good coach in your mind from your own experience or what you've seen from, people that you've worked with?
Ooh, loaded one there. Yeah. That's, I think every program, whether it's university, club, high school, USL2, they all want their own identity, and whatever that identity is, it's got to match. The coach has to match that identity. And that's what we wanted here when we were hiring for our head coach. When I got hired, I was a head coach at an AI school in Kansas, Sterling College. They wanted an identity, and it was about, for me, when I got hired, it was about creating an identity for that team. It was discipline in the classroom, on the field, continuity. When I got hired, I was, I think, the third or fourth coach in 3 or 4 years. The previous 2 coaches stayed 2 seasons each, and I was brought in to bring them some continuity. I was the first coach in probably, I think it was like 6 years or more, that actually saw a freshman class graduate. And that was one of my own goals myself. I wanted to make sure that those players, had continuity. They had an identity. They could trust the coach because previously, and it happens, not everybody's going to stay for 4 years or whatever they might commit to initially. Things change. Plans change. So for here, when we were hiring, we wanted to make sure that the coach is going to say, hey, we want to play this way. This is what we want to do off the field. We want to bring in certain players from certain areas, or we want to make sure we have a good network. What are you going to bring to the table that really matches what we already have in place? And our ownership's extremely successful business people, and they were able to grill a little bit and to make sure that, we're going to bring in the right people. I think I was a bit of a gamble myself when they hired me, because I was just a college coach and I'd never been in this USL2 setting before. And now I'm tasked to run a club. And that I think it's just, hey, how can I sell myself to say I'm the right guy for the job? And that was kind of what it was for Paul. And it was pretty easy for Paul. I mean, it's not like he was inexperienced. So he had an identity of how he wanted to coach. He had a couple years of college coaching experience. He's a club coach. He's just an all-around footballer, really.
I had a recent coaching colleague say to me that, he appreciated sort of the, I don't know, I guess I would call it stoic nature that I can have at times, coaching, but also, I can get incredibly animated in training sessions, and depending on the topic or whatever, I can get, pretty jazzed about it pretty quickly. So I kind of have this weird sort of yin and yang thing going on. And a lot of it really depends on the group too, right? If it's a younger group and, kids in elementary school, there's an element of fun and being a little silly and whatever, but we're still trying to accomplish something. My wife says to me, she goes, you're truly at your best when you're with, older players, because, that's, I guess, why you have a podcast, is because I can't shut the hell up sometimes. But, and she's told me that over 12 years of marriage, so God bless her. But, what do you like at a training session, or what do you like on match day? When you're sort of more hands-on, or when you're, working with goalkeepers or whatever. Describe your demeanor.
I've toned it down a lot, I'd say, from my first few years in coaching. I'm extremely passionate about the game, and for me, I felt like my passion was always sort of a positive thing, even though I was kind of a yeller at times. But I kind of shifted that. I try to stay away from referees as much as possible, because that can negatively impact players and their reactions. Most of the time, I'm pretty easygoing with it these days. Encouraging. I feel like I'm always encouraging players. I definitely want to do that. Try to catch some things before mistakes happen, instead of saying, hey, don't play that ball. Obviously, if you turn the ball over, I don't want to play that ball, however it might have been played. Or, hey, it was a savable ball. I'm not going to say, hey, you got to make that save, because our goalkeepers are going to know that they want to make those saves. They're not dumb, and they know that they have a high standard for themselves because they want to go pro. So it's pretty easy going. We have a fun time. We have a very, very fun staff. Paul's great to work with. We have two other assistants, Terry Nickel and Jack Hermans, who are absolute legends in Cincinnati soccer. Terry and Jack both have been coaching probably 30 plus years maybe in Cincinnati. So if somebody grew up in Cincinnati and played soccer at any age, they probably ran across Terry or Jack at some point. And we have an absolute ball, because they're all just great. Everybody has stories. Terry and Jack's stories are incredible. Terry came over. He was at Sheffield United. Wherever he was at in England, all kinds of places. He came over for indoor soccer in the 80s, and stories from indoor soccer days are incredible. Jack had his Dutch. Jack Hermans is Dutch, and he has some Dutch stories, and he used to coach at Xavier in the 90s, so he has Xavier stories. It's all great, and of course, all of us do some youth training as well, so we have youth stories that we can talk about for days as well. So it's very lighthearted, but when it's business, and the players know that. We want serious training because they want to make it to the next level, and especially with Paul, and he provides that because he's been there. Jack and Terry have been as well, but their pro days are a few years ago.
How do you, when you think of your coaching staff then, and you think of the players that are there, how do you, what's the man management like? Those players want to go pro. Those players, they want to win. I'm assuming, but what's the man management like? How is it to also? But they're also players in 2019 that need to be cared for emotionally, psychologically. How does that work with you all?
Yeah. So the first thing that we know is they're people, and we treat everybody like a person. We have relationships with them. We talk to them off the field. We talk about their lives, what's going on. I mean, these players have all kinds of things that go on. Some of them have never been to Cincinnati, so it's an adjustment period for them as well. Some of them haven't seen their mom or dad or families or girlfriends for months. So we have to deal with that as well. So we want to make sure that they know we care about them, and we'll talk with them. We'll always shake hands. I mean, every day it's a handshake, a hug, whatever it might be, whatever the player might want. But greeting them with a smile, enjoying their presence as soon as they get in. The first half hour or so, they're just hanging out in the changing room or in the athletic training room, getting treatment and just enjoying the company of each other. Then when it comes to the playing time and the training stuff, it is challenging at times because we carry about an average to maybe a slightly below average roster for USL2. We have around 35 guys on average. I think this year we got up to 38. It's a lot, but at the same time, we know that guys have things going on. So they may have a wedding to go to, or they may have vacation planned in the middle of the season. This year, more than any, we had guys go off to pro camps, whether it's USL or MLS camps to spend some time. Those are important things, and guys have to understand that they have to buy their time and earn their training, earning their training spots and earning their starting spots, earning the dressing 18, and they'll get chances. And some of them aren't really pleased at times with those, but they also got to understand we have to manage their health as well, because most of them have a full career that they're going to go back and join their university. We want to make sure that the colleges and universities and the programs are getting them at their best and they're healthy. So while everybody wants to play because they're players and they have a high competitive mentality, it's not healthy for them to play our season and then a full our season and then jump straight into a fall season. So we want to make sure that they understand, hey, we're going to rotate you because it's what's best for you. And it's what's best for your own coach and our relationships with the programs that we get players from. In the end, it comes down to they understand. They have to understand that we care about them, and that's the number one reason why we're making those decisions.
So it's interesting because I think you're obviously a good segue between the college game and the full professional game, because you operate as a professional organization, but obviously you're still amateur, but you still have the kind of the demands of a professional team. And I think that's something that's so fascinating to me. So I've never coached professionally, that man management. And I mean, obviously I'm a Liverpool supporter, so I just see Klopp and I just see how it seems like he's endeared to all the players. But it is a zero-sum game with professionals. You have to win, and it doesn't matter how much the player likes you if they're not winning. And I think that's such a balance to create, especially at the professional level, is to be able to create that connection, create that relationship, but also I think in the end positively can drive a performance. And I think ultimately that's what we're all trying to do is honestly, we want to honestly be able to have that relationship, but we want that positivity to drive a performance. And I think that's probably what you've got going on from at the level that you guys are at, being kind of that intermediary between the college game and the full professional game.
Yeah. Now, ideally in a perfect world, it would be amazing just to carry, 25, 28 guys. But we know that's not realistic at our level because some guys, they'll have to take summer classes potentially just to ease up on a fall or spring semester to graduate when they want to graduate. So we know we're going to lose some. And that just, basically forces our hand a bit in carrying a bit of a larger roster. Hey, guys are going to get called back early because they have captain's practices or camps to run at the university. But we got to carry some other guys or bring some other guys in later, knowing that some guys will leave early. And that's what we do that. We manage guys that way as well.
So Brandon, you said something that I think is going to tie in probably to some of the stuff that you've written about solidarity payments and promotion relegation and players moving on. And so sporting merit is something that a lot of us in the footballing world really believe in. And the example you gave of if you're carrying 35 guys or gals on a roster and that they have to come in and they have to earn their place, right? And they have to compete and they have to battle and they have to, work as hard as they possibly can to get into the 18. And then when they get in the 18, then to get into the 11 and just to this constant that it has to be about merit, it has to be about performance. And that, ultimately, that if a player moves on to something bigger and better, that some sort of compensation should come back to that development, foundation that they had. And so, I don't know how familiar the listening audience is with, the terminology of a solidarity payment, but maybe explain a little bit about what that is to people and just the importance of something like that for a club like yourself or others in, a USL2 or, an NPSL or a WPSL or something like that, that could actually be a really important thing that if we were to reinvent soccer here in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So the solidarity payments and training compensation, it comes into play when an amateur signs their first pro deal and when a player is sold up until the age of 23 years old. All the teams that are clubs, all the clubs that have a role in that player's development, they get a percentage, and it's a small percentage of that player's transfer fees and such. So for us, we've had 12 players sign pro in 5 seasons. That's not including the 2018 season, really, and the 2019 season, where in 2018 we had an extremely young team. And for the 2020 pro, kind of matriculation, we'll have players from our 2018 season signing pro contracts in 2020. Likewise, we just finished 2019 season in July. We have some guys that, we know that they're already kind of pro deals. Even let's just say it's $5,000. Let's just say $5,000 from 12 players signing pro come back to our club. That's a major impact on our budget. Everybody comes in here for free. They pay nothing. We put them up for 3 months. We feed them for 3 months. They get great treatment for 3 months, and then they go on. It keeps clubs like us afloat across the world, really. If you look at the breakdown of, I have it from Accrington Stanley, I think. Their top 7 income streams as a club, and players are the top 2, I believe. One of them's just sales in general, and another one is solidarity payments and training compensation. Because they know, that's how their club is able to stay operating and able to stay producing players. And even more so, it's how they exist for their community. And that's what clubs are. They're for their communities. And they benefit everybody in that community, whether it's the local pub, the fish and chip shop, whatever it is. If it wasn't for that footballing club in those communities, we don't know what the communities might be. And that's where we lose here. And that's part of the reason why we only have 70 professional clubs, actually 70 clubs in our pyramid, our U.S. pyramid with Division 1, 2, and 3, because we only have 3 in our pyramid. We only have 70 clubs for our whole country of over 325 million people. And I truly believe you say, hey, solidarity payments training compensation is installed in the next 2 years, that we'll see more and more develop from the soccer side, and especially the first team side, from clubs, youth clubs, whatever it is, that want to provide more opportunities for players in their pathways and their mobility upward.
Well, great pivot into just promotion relegation and why an open system, not only would benefit the U.S. in terms of a footballing landscape. I think for us, it would be the great, it would be the great domino to fall. But, for where we are, especially on the men's side, right, with our national team and what we've been able to produce, I think that the quality on everything would just shoot up. And I absolutely love what you said. And it's, I call it the football romantic in me, but local communities should have something that they want to support. They should have that badge that they want to believe in. They should have players that they get to know. And, I've told this story before, but the club that my son is at right now, that they have an NPSL team, and that this was one day before training. And, I was just being dad that day. I wasn't involved in the training. I was just showing up and watching, and it was just great to do that. And he told me in the restroom, he said, "Dad," he goes, "I want to play in the first team someday." Now, this is a kid that's 9 years old.
That's great.
Yeah. And he knows that. And, the three of us are obviously football crazy. So, we're probably in a smaller percentage maybe than the majority of folks in our country. But that was not only just a cool moment as a dad and as a coach, but just as a person who loves this game, and just this game just opens up opportunities for people. And it's, I call it the great connector of the world. That, you put people from all around the world and you put a football there, they're going to find a common bond. Their style might look different, how they approach the game, the creativity, the decision-making might look different, but there's this quality that brings everybody together. And, back to my question about just promotion relegation in terms of the openness of a system. What do you think that would do, right? You have an MLS club literally in your backyard probably. But competition, at least in my mind, is a good thing.
Absolutely, 100%. If we had promotion relegation in 5 years, let's say it's installed in 5 years, we would be taking those steps right now. We would have taken those steps 2 years ago. Our ownership's Dutch. They come from a system of promotion relegation. They believe in it, and it's something that I go back and say it's FC Cincinnati, and what they've done is incredible. But it's really hard to say, you know what? How hard is it to believe that no professional soccer has existed in Cincinnati? It did before them, but Cincinnati should always have professional soccer playing. It shouldn't have took FC Cincinnati to do what they did. It should have always had that opportunity. And that's part of the reason why the Ohio Valley Premier League started as well, because we believe that everybody needs that first team to play in. And how can we provide those opportunities for communities that have that aspiration of, we need something bigger and better, even though we can't buy into professional soccer in the U.S. right now because of the system, but we can provide our best possible system club and the first team that we can. And they're going to play at the highest level that they can participate in. And if if system changes, then they're right there already. If the system doesn't change, well, then we're going to try to produce the best quality first team, and let's call them Division I in the OVPL, because that's what it's going to be. And these communities deserve it. Lexington, Kentucky has their first, let's call it a first team. They have their first team in 20 years playing in 2020. It's been since the year 2000 that Lexington has had an elite men's team playing.
That's crazy.
And even, somewhat even crazier, maybe not, but Lexington, Kentucky has never had a representative in the U.S. Open Cup in the history of the Open Cup.
the not so open cup in Lexington, Kentucky. Right?
So and now because we got together, that's possible, and now we're hoping to bring this excitement into Lexington, who's never experienced it before. And we have other communities that we're in talks with that's doing the same. I mean, before we qualified, the Cincinnati Dutch Lions qualified for the Open Cup in 2016. We played in it. We qualified from 2015. We played in 2016. Even though we didn't play at home, we went to Indianapolis and played. That was the first time Cincinnati has had the Open Cup since the 60s, the 1960s.
Wow.
So we can provide that, and we can provide it to any community that wants to bring it. I mean, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, if you want Open Cup, if you want high level competition, reach out to us in OVPL, because we'll bring it to you.
People seem to forget that soccer in this country began before World Cup '94, and that there's actually a really deep and rich, and maybe that's something that, Aaron, we explore in the future for the podcast, but like a U.S. soccer historian, this country actually has a really deep and rich football history. I don't know if the majority of people would actually even know that, and they think it probably began in '94 or '96 when MLS started or whatever. So.
Well, it was the 30th anniversary of Paul Caligiuri's goal against Trinidad and Tobago. That was, last week, I think, which got the U.S. into the 1990 World Cup. So that was pretty – I remember where I was in Grapevine, Texas, watching that game. Oh, my gosh. And Paul Caligiuri hits the half volley from 25 yards out, and the goalkeeper couldn't see anything in the sun. And there they go, U.S., with a 21-year-old Tony Meola in goal. I think he was 21 at the time. He was young. That was amazing. Good memory.
So, Brandon, my son asked me this. He had training tonight and just got to be dad again and just kind of watch him do some futsal stuff. But he asked me on the drive home, he said, Dad, he goes, are you going to ask that question that you usually ask? So it's good to know that he listens to the podcast. But I've asked people in the past, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong when it comes to football or soccer in this country? And, as a guy that has seen a little bit of everything, what would you say?
I think I'm a bit of a pessimist, so I'll stop with the pessimism right now. But what we're doing, I think there's a lot of people that do care. I think there's a lot of people that care about players. They care about the game. They want to push people forward. They want to push the game forward. And I think that's great. And that's probably, it's probably more people care now than ever before. And that may only continue to increase. So I think that's awesome. They care about all kinds of things, whether it's rural soccer, whether it's college soccer, whether it's club soccer. Now it's the DA involved or ECNL involved. There's a lot of people that just genuinely care about providing opportunities and outlets. Inner city soccer, more power to the people, but those, soccer shots and stuff like that go into preschools. People care about that. That's hard for me to care about because I deal with 3 toddlers right now, and I just couldn't imagine trying to teach soccer to a whole crowd of them when we just knock a ball around the house a little bit. So more power to those people that care about those kids. So I think that's incredible of that. And that's kind of what got me involved in soccer is people cared in a soccer desert of southeastern Ohio. That there isn't much there. But all it took was some people caring about it, and I caught on. I come from an extreme football family and football community, and I was a bit of a black sheep that went the soccer route. And I haven't turned back since. What are we doing wrong? I think some of that I'm gonna push it back on the players. I think players need to do more themselves. We talked about this when I coached in college, and it's not even just soccer. When I coached in college the last 4 years, from 2013 to 2017, every semester we'd have a meeting with every athlete, all athletes in there, and our athletic director, he's a historic swim coach, Gary Kempf at the University of Kansas. He's a Hall of Famer, and he would lead it off and say, you know what, we don't have gym rats anymore. You see, every university, it doesn't matter what it is. Some say, oh, we don't have this or that. We don't have the budgets that Division I or whoever has. But you know what they do have? They have a gym. They have a soccer field. They have baseball fields. They have batting cages. And they're largely empty outside of organized training. And to me, that just trickles on down, because they don't learn that in college. They learn that before college. We spend too much time probably driving everywhere or flying places to compete. That's unnecessary. We just need to play more. We need to train more. We need to spend more time on a ball. If you're a baseball player, you need to spend more time in a batting cage. If you're a basketball player, you need to spend more time shooting some hoops. Steve Nash, how did he get so good dribbling a tennis ball around school? At least that's what they say. I don't know. I don't know Steve Nash, but that's what everybody said. I think that's what a lot of it revolves around. I mean, I think we're all roughly the same generation. I can't speak for you guys, but I can speak for what I did, and I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Me and my friends, we went out and did things. I didn't ever play organized football, but I played football with them. We shot hoops when we wanted to. We played pickle or home run derby when we wanted to. Not much soccer was played because they weren't. I mean, some of them were soccer players, but it was just a recreational thing. We played soccer during soccer season. And guess what? We still had time for our video games. We did it all, and we still had time for video games. We didn't rely on coaches to make us better. We did it ourselves. Maybe that wasn't the mentality, but that's what we just did. We just went out and played sport, whatever it was.
I want to ask a question on that, because I deal with this as well on a daily basis. Is I feel like our players collegiately, they still struggle to find the motivation to train without structure. And if there's not more than 5 people there, if there's not a coach there, if there's not a training session plan already devised, if there's not cones out there, if there's not mannequins out there, it's very challenging for them to do it. And the way I try to tackle all these issues is how do we teach them intrinsically? I guess that's the whole point, is they have to decide to do it on their own, but how do we provide that environment for them? Because listen, I provide that environment for them. Hey, you can go out to the field anytime you want. You can use the bag of balls. You can use all the cones. You can use all the mannequins. You can use whatever you want. And it's still, it's still something that is not as easy for them to do as if there was a session plan already made. So, that's the struggle right there, isn't it? The challenge. How do we
absolutely
foster that environment?
I think I don't know. I mean, it's tough to do, right? I mean, because that's one of those buzzwords in American soccer culture, right? Like, how can we create a culture of free play, of street play, of just going out and doing it as a passion instead of something that's necessarily organized, structured, forced on us. And maybe I was a bit spoiled a little bit more when I was out in Kansas. Because our athletic director would also say, like, after our meeting, he was like, he never wanted to say it publicly, but it was just like, the soccer players, the men's soccer players, we don't ever have to worry about this conversation with them because they're always playing. And, maybe that was some of the culture, because I had Latinos, from Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia. I had a French guy, I had them from everywhere, and that was just what they did. And, some of our domestic guys, they fit right in with it as well. They never shied away from just going out and playing. We got kicked off of public fields because they're like, oh, you can't use this turf patch because you're scaring kids away. Well, it's free, right? I mean, it's publicly funded, and they're like, well, you can't do that still because other people have to use it. And it's just like, well, what can we do? But building that culture of just going out and playing is tough, especially when they've never truly done it. And so really, some of it comes back to, can we get certain groups? Can we start with small groups of 1 or 2, 3 leaders that can help build that and say, hey, let's go do this. Maybe we plant a bug in their ear of some things that they can do. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. We deal with it here on the daily. I mean, even USL2, you think these guys are extremely motivated, and many of them are, but we give them the same opportunities. And it's amazing to see the guys that are going to be the last ones to show up are usually the first ones to leave as well. And you can see mentally that, some guys have it for the next level, and other guys, they don't quite understand it. If you're going to be that same mentality, wait till you're the rookie at the pro level, and you have that same mentality. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a short career.
Brandon, I love what you said, and I'm not going to win any points over here with the U.S. Federation. Lord knows that I like to take my swings at them when I can. But I think if we had a living, breathing U.S. Soccer Federation that actually gave a damn about soccer in this country, everything that you guys have just spoke to would be high on their priority list. I haven't experienced it, right? So I think that they could actually help set the agenda, help drive it home, help local communities like Cincinnati and, Athens, Ohio, and, wherever you are in Florida, Aaron, right now, and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and everywhere else in this country, that, every club, whether it be an ECNL, a DA, a club that competes, at a sort of a elite or premier level, or whatever the hell they call it, or just a rec club, that they could drive that home. And, they're sitting on a ton of cash, use it. And part of it too, it's counterbalancing what is going on sociologically. I think this might get, kind of glossed over a little bit, but I everything you said, Brandon, of, yes, the three of us grew up in a generation where, basically my parents said, just be home when the streetlights come on and go play and roam. And, me and my bike basically took me wherever we went. So we know that that's different now, right? And when we see it, we actually kind of probably stop and pause and go, oh my God, where's that kid's parents? I know that's happened for my wife and I at different times. So knowing that, and knowing that there's some really weird and bad people out there, how do we counterbalance that, right? So again, I think the Federation could show just some structure is what I'm getting at here, of putting some things in place, that they make a national, every Friday is Free Play Friday. And here's where it's going to happen. Here's what you got to do. Show up. Coaches literally sit on their hands other than to provide some balls, maybe some cones, and some goals the kids can play on. And they just start playing, or whatever it may be. But I know it's exactly what you said, whether it was hoops, whether it was home run derby in the backyard, tackle football, ultimate frisbee, whatever. I mean, just doing stupid stuff. We were outside, we were active, and we were engaged in some sort of physical activity of some sort. And, dreaded when we got to late August and knowing that we had to go back to school because our time outside would be significantly less. And that basically transformed what we did at recess. So obviously you can see I'm a little bit passionate about this topic, but yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is spot on. So maybe we'll have you back on. Well, we want to have you back on, but have you back on and we can maybe do a deeper dive on the ways that all three of us can fix the hot wreck that is U.S. soccer in this country. So.
But that'd be fun. I mean, That's what it come down to. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I don't know if you saw it or not, but one of my goals this year was to do more. And like I had that conversation with my wife. Like I was just kind of struggling with what I was doing. I know I'm in a good spot. Like Cincinnati Dutch Lions, everything about it is incredible, but I still think I can do more. I think as a club we could do more. And one of those things that kind of fell in my lap was S1 goalkeeping. And now I can provide goalkeepers with high quality, they're pro level gloves that aren't breaking the bank. Growing up as a goalkeeper, if I wanted a good pair, I thought I had to spend $100, $120 now, or $100. If I had a goalkeeper tell me I spent $150 on a pair of gloves, I'm just like, whew, like it doesn't need to be, especially since all the gloves are pretty much made at the same spot. So that's what I want to do. I mean, that was one of the first things. Hey, let's save people money by getting affordable gloves into the U.S. that are going to be quality. So that was the first one. And then, the last 2 months, the Ohio Valley Premier League it's literally been an 18-month project, figuring out how we can get it going. And the last 2 months, it just absolutely just went full throttle on it. And, that to me, that's kind of my next step of like, how can I do more? And it's like, I can bring great soccer to communities that don't have it. If anybody wants to, or hey, guess what? A youth club wants a next step, but they can't afford USL2 or NPSL or whatever it is. You should be able to do it here locally. And that's what this is about. You can do this locally, and it doesn't take much. I mean, the budgets are very bare bones, and you can have a great, great team. And you can do it from 16 all the way up until you can't walk anymore. And, it's basically we want competitive teams in it, and we want those just like your kids are, and my kids hopefully are eventually. We want to be able to watch first teamers play, and we want them to spend time with first teamers, and we're going to do it all locally.
So that means I can play?
You have to make the cut.
Oh. There's that.
I mean, we do need a player manager in Athens to bring a team in. So, I mean, just.
Oh, geez.
Who do your solidarity payments go to, Aaron?
Yeah, my pocket.
Grapevine football club, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we ain't going to bring up North Texas since they dropped men's soccer.
No, exactly.
Brandon, if people want to connect with you and follow along with not only your personal journey in the football world, but also with the Cincinnati Dutch Lions, how can they connect with you guys?
Yeah, personally, you can find me Ponchak CDLFC, Ponchak, and then CDLFC. That's my Twitter and Instagram. I'm pretty active on Twitter. And then S1 Goalkeeping, S1GK USA. And then OVPL Soccer is OVPL Soccer. That's for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then Cincinnati Dutch Lions is Cincinnati DLFC. That's on Twitter and Instagram both. And we have YouTube as well. So we live stream all of our games on YouTube, home games. So it's pretty fun. I mean, all of it. I mean, we're pretty active on all of them and social media. So feel free to reach out. Anything we can do to help, I can do to help. I'm always interested in helping more and do more. Four things is not enough for me, I guess. So
we're all a little crazy in the football journey. So Brandon Ponchak, man, thank you so much for coming on the latest episode of the On the Touchline podcast, and really enjoyable conversation. Want to have you back on sometime, and all the best to you and the folks at Cincinnati Dutch Lions. I know it's on my Christmas list. So
Great. I appreciate you guys. Keep it up here. I'm like I said, I'm all caught up on the Touchline, so I'm ready for some more. And keep it up, all the coaches that's come in, and if you haven't come on and you're just listening, keep up the good work. We need you. Hopefully we'll come across each other and we'll enjoy some quality time on the pitch, on the Touchline too.
Well said. Well said.